And is there going to be, I mean, it's something that has bubbled around for a while, but is there going to be a Bromide Dub actual release? And I know it's something we've talked about. And
there is, but it's a
trying
remix
to
at the moment.
form something into a specific song to release.
Can I claim the very first one?
No, I don't. Hang on, I'm just trying to think what releases I've had and what names they've been under actually.
You may have to slightly slot more into the mainstream.
Yeah, I might.
know,
I'll
if
have.
you
Might
do
actually.
have to do
I
that,
might
but-
actually have to pay attention to what my discography actually looks like. Yeah, there will be, because it's the same thing. Again, time thing. But my goal is to be doing this. Like I was discussing with you, the concept of almost putting out an album, or an album in the form of a live recording once a month. And then taking part of that and turning that into a track that people can recognise as a track, and then pushing that alongside of it as well. It's definitely a goal to do. It's just again, like so many things I keep on saying, but it's just a time thing to get them all done.
And that is a process that, some electronic musicians who do kind of jam and improvise on hardware, they'll record the sets and put that together, and then kind of chop that to a song.
Well, that's the thing as well. I guess it's Simon was a great example of that. It's just live stuff.
That's kind of part of his process.
Yep. So I've figured out. I figured out a nifty way in the studio where I can basically play live, but actually capture all the audio streams separately, and then throw them into the studio and actually carry on working from there. So it'll just be another process for me that I'll just figure out how I'm going to do it. That's part of the fun for me, is just figuring out possibly overly convoluted and technical ways of doing things, but
you just find that sometimes on stage, when you're just jamming around with certain loops, you just come up with stuff you never would have in the studio.
Which is a big part of how you work. I mean, I've seen sort of a lot of the live stuff, which, I know kind of where you're going to start, and then you're maybe 20 minutes in, and it's like, well, you've said before, where did this stuff come from?
Yeah, and that's it. I still say, me working in a studio is basically kind of trying to switch off the conscious brain and just see what happens. I know the gear well enough now that I can kind of go off in one direction and then see where it ends up. I've never been a very... every time I try to direct where the music goes, it always comes out sounding conceited to me. So I've just learned to kind of try to let go and just see what happens, which is also a challenge when you kind of have in your head that I should be writing a kind of track for this or for this or for this, because it just never ends up sounding something like that for me. I've always been aware that everything I do is I do tend to play to that crowd, to the producers, to the DJs. But on the other side of it as well is, which happened. I basically saw it I realised it was happening years ago when I was working at DMC and selling the CDJs and turntables and stuff. And you'd have guys who would come in and go, I want to get started DJing. And you'd always ask them, well, what kind of music do you play? Because that would lead towards, certain mixers, certain, maybe you want a turntable, CDJ, whatever it was, particular styles of music lead towards certain things. And I had a young guy came in and basically said, I said, well, what kind of music are you into? And he's like, I don't know, what should I be playing? And at that point I kind of realised that for a lot of people, DJing or production had taken a different turn. Now they wanted to be a DJ or they wanted to be a producer. It wasn't something that they just did and that was the name of what they were doing.
Expression rather than to be seen as the person.
And it was a shift, and it's not my background, and it seems a pretty foreign concept to me, but that's also, I hate to say it, possibly the majority now. It is a very scene-orientated thing.
It is very accessible these days as well.
Yeah.
With people being, can get an MP3 now.
Yeah. So it was a shift, because it's, and I've had a few where you've got certain people. Funnily enough, a lot of people are so really, really driven and about finding out and really perfecting their craft, and not necessarily going to be the people who you're going to be seeing playing out week in and week out. There's no correlation between those two things. There is some, but it's also taken. Yeah, it's a different thing as well. But then, see, I do get feedback from overseas as well, from producers overseas, so about it, because they're watching the video and learning stuff that way.
But is your opinion, okay, so part of it is possibly a cultural shift, it's popular to be a DJ, be the guy behind the decks.
Yeah, which is now shifting over to the producer.
Yes, but do you also think it is a little bit thanks to technology that it is? I think we were talking before, like, for the price of one vinyl, you can now get 20 MP3s. And
it was something I was actually thinking about the week leading up to this, because it was just like, okay, well, the questions I've kind of asked of people as well is, because the one I've always asked, I'll ask myself a question, is, but it was always the shift, now that stuff is more accessible. Has it been a good thing? Has it been a bad thing? Anyone can start recording and producing a label and everything like that. And on one hand, yes, it is accessible to a lot more people now, and people who, I was thinking about it, as somebody who was always driven to have that outlet and to do that expression, was always going to find a way regardless. So now it's just, it's almost, what it's done is it's just risen the noise floor of everything. So there's a lot more noise out there now as well. But I've always kind of thought, regardless, even if you still had to buy hardware and keyboards and big synths that took 5 people to carry around, the people who really wanted to do it would still find a way. I would still find a way. So yeah, it's just been a shift. It's been a shift to that, because now it's a product that can be sold, basically. Yeah.
Cool.
I think about this stuff a lot, Yeah. Well, possibly too much, but I think because it's always been a thing, because I've been not necessarily so involved with the scene, I've always stood back a couple of steps, but I've always been very intrigued watching it and looking at what was happening and patterns and changes and stuff like that. So a lot of observation.
Cool. Thanks, man. Sweet.
Now I'll go home and chop it all up into
chop
10-minute
it
segments.
Yeah. Make that 10 minutes.
Do I want to really say that?
It is quite outstanding that, given that all the different products.